West Asian conflicts. West Asia refers to the region towards the west of Asia. So, to describe this area, we use one more term. The term is called as a Middle East. Means West Asian part is called as a Middle East. So, in this area, there was a conflict between the two people or two religion people. So, Arabs and Jews, every time they used to fight each other due to some conflicts, and it was mainly related to the occupation of Palestine. Palestine, which was inhabited by Arabs. This Palestine inhabited by Arabs, and before World War II, if you observe, it was under the control of British people. Before the World War II, it was under the control of British people. And this Palestine who wanted to occupy here, the Jewish people wanted to occupy. And if you come to this area, so in a Palestine, so there was a like a holy place which is called as a Jerusalem. So that Jerusalem, it's a holy city for all religious people. Means Jews, Christians and Muslims, all the religious people, for all the religious people, it's a holy city. So all religious people goes to worship there. But the Jews traditionally considered Palestine as a promised land where they had been exiled in ancient times and pushed across Europe and Asia. In Europe, if you observe, so means this land it's a promised land for Jewish people. But due to some issues, these people were exiled. So what was the issue here? So because olden days, ancient times, if you see, the Jewish people were blamed for the crucifixion of Jesus. Crucifixion of Jesus is nothing but the Jewish king, he was crucified, means he was killed the Jesus by putting nails to the hands and legs. So that is the reason all the Christians people started hating the Jewish people and they started persecuting them, means killing them. Especially in the Nazis period, Hitler period, all the Jews were jailed and they were killed. A number of nearly 60 lakhs of people were killed and they were all jailed. So due to these all reasons, these Jewish people were ran away from that Palestine place to another Asian countries and other part of European countries. And so now, and once again, I'm repeating here, West Asian conflicts. So this West Asia refers to the region towards the west of Asia. West Asia is nothing but West Asian conflicts refers to the west of Asia, and it has one more name. The term is called as a Middle East. And in this area, there was a conflict between two people, Arabs and Jews. They often described as a West Asian crisis. And it was mainly related to the occupation of Palestine. And these Arabs and Jews, they used to conflict, they used to fight each other only because of occupying the Palestine. And if you see, before the World War II, this Palestine was under the control of British. And who were inhabited here? Arabs were inhabited. Before World War II, the Arabs were living in this place. And in a Palestine, we had one holy city. So that holy city name is called Jerusalem. So this Jerusalem is a holy city for three religious people, Jews, Christians and Muslims. Three religious people go there and they worship there and they visit this city. And Jewish people, for the Jews, traditionally considered Palestine as a promised land. For them, it was a promised land, and from where they had exiled, means from where they were removed in ancient times. Why they were removed? Because of crucifixion of Jesus. These people were removed by the Christians, and most of the Christians people started persecuting them, means killing them. Especially in Nazis period, it was increased. And the Nazis leader Hitler, he killed a number of 60 lakhs of people, means 6 millions of people were killed by him, and number of people were jailed. So due to these all reasons, these Jews, they started moving away from there to the other part of Asian countries and European countries. These people wanted to unite again. So to unite themselves, they started one movement. That movement was called as a Zionist movement. So this Zionist movement was emerged by Jewish people. And these Jewish people wanted to unite and they want to build their own state. And they wanted to have their own homeland, which was previously means ancient time they used to live. And to unite this and to get into again Palestine, so they wanted to reclaim the Palestine, and they needed support. That support they got from the Western powers. So once again I am repeating here, the Jewish people, they started emerging one movement. They started one movement. That movement was called as a Zionist movement, and as per this movement they wanted to unite all the people to build their own state and to have their own homeland. And they wanted to reclaim the Palestine again. They wanted to regain it again. So for that purpose they got the support from the Western powers. So Palestine. So in this Palestine, already Arabs people were living before World War II, and this place has become as a complicated area. Why? Because the massive oil reserves in the Middle East were discovered. So in this area, what were discovered here? Oil resources were discovered, especially in this totally Middle East Middle East countries. In the especially in the Arabian Peninsula. So both the US and USSR, they wanted to have this sphere of influence. They wanted to bring this region under the sphere of influence of this US and USSR. And they would not let the other country to establish its control here. So US and USSR both wanted to have this Arabian Peninsula under their sphere of influence. In 1947, if you observe, in 1947, UNO has issued one resolution. As per this resolution, Palestine should be divided into two states. One state for Arabs and one state for Jews. Means before that only Arabs were living. And when the Jewish people started Zionist movement, the UNO also passed one resolution in the favor of Jewish people. So the Palestine, they wanted to divide into two parts, one for Arabs, one for Jews. For the Arab people, it's a Palestine, and for the Jewish people, Israel. So that is what they wanted to establish. Means they wanted to establish into two nations. In 1948, from the Palestine, the British troops were withdrawn here, and Israel was formed for Jewish people. But these Arabs people were not ready to agree for that, and they did not want to give up their homelands. So anyhow, forcefully the Israel people, when they were occupying some of the refugees, they left the Palestine country and they went to the Arab states, and they had to live as refugees in Arab countries. So once again I am repeating here, Arabs were living already in the Palestine, but due to the discovery of oil resources in the Middle East, this area became as a complicated area. So then US and USSR both, they wanted to have under their influence these areas, Middle East area, nothing but Arabian Peninsula area. Why? Because they have already a number of industries, but they do not have any oil resources. So they wanted to form the governments in favor of them. So in this process, in 1947, UNO has passed one resolution that Palestine should be divided into two states. One is for Arabs, one is for Jews. In 1948, the British troops already withdrew from from Palestine, and Israel is formed for Jewish people. But these Arabs people who are living already there, they were not ready to agree for that, and they don't want to give up their own country for the Israeli people, Jewish people. So they don't want to leave their homeland. Anyhow, because of force, some of the people left this Palestinian country, and they had to live as refugees in the Arab states. The president of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, he made an effort to unite all the Arabs. And the president of Egypt, his name was Gamal Abdel Nasser. He wanted to unite all the Arabs, and he made it. And he formed Fedayins. Fedayins are nothing but suicide squads. So these people, for causing explosions in public places, especially in Israel, means when the Israeli people were not living to leave the Palestine country, and these people wanted to occupy again. So Arab people, they wanted to regain again the Israel area for them. So for this purpose, with the help of Abdul Nasser, these people, suicide squads were prepared and they started explosions, bomb blastings in the public places of Israel. So in 1956, Israel in 1956, Israel attacked Egypt with the support of Western powers. So by seeing these all suicide squads, Israel started, means Israel only attacked Egypt with the support of Western powers. But anyhow, because of force of USA and USSR, so there was a ceasefire, means they had to stop the war. So these people, Israel had to withdraw its army. In 1956, war was started because of influence of USA and USSR. So this war was stopped, withdrawn. But in 1967 again, so firstly here Israel attacked Egypt, but in 1967 Arabs attacked Israel. But Israel once again, means that they decided that offense is the best form of defense, and it attacked Egypt. Israel attacked Egypt and totally it was destroyed to the Egypt. Means Israeli people, with the help of their army, they destroyed the Egypt. And moreover, they were occupied some of the parts of Palestine. So that parts were Gaza and Golan Heights and West Bank. So these areas were part of Palestine, and these areas also were occupied by the Israeli people. And these areas, they announced that these areas will act as a buffer zone. Buffer zone means even Israelis also can move, and Palestinian people also can live there. So Israel people, so they attacked 3 places and they occupied, and moreover they demanded, means they decided that these 3 areas will act as a buffer zone. But they refused to return again as per the UN resolution. So what happened after occupying here? Israel, while refusing to return the occupied territories despite UN resolution, means the UNO has given solution that they had to give back again these 3 areas to the Palestinian people, but they refused to return to them. PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. Palestinian Liberation Organization, briefly it is called as a PLO. So it was established in 1964 and its main aim was to regain the land. So already we have discussed that Palestine was divided into 2 states. One is for the Arab people, it was called as a Palestine, and for the Jewish people, that state was called as a Israel. And that Israel part they wanted to regain, and that too their method was non-violence method, means they don't want to fight with them, only with the non-violence, only with the mutual negotiations only they wanted to gain it back. So but in 1967, for the party PLO, the Yasser Arafat became as a leader, president of this party. So when Yasser Arafat became president of this PLO, he pressured, means he pressurized, means he forced the Arab countries, all the Arab countries to attack on Israel. But Arabs were not interested in this attack, means in this issue. So when they were not interested in this issue, so Arafat he started, means he led the terrorist attacks on Israeli people, especially like plane hijackings and killing the sports persons. So when these issues were continued, means when they continued the terrorist attacks, through plane hijackings and killing the sports person and Israel people, so they have occupied some of the part. Just now we discussed that. So that in that part they were refused to give all the facilities to them, and whatever the promise means whatever the promise they had to give the facilities, and that promise also cancelled. So by seeing these terrorist attacks and retaliation and further retaliation and counter retaliation, this was continuing. So finally Arafat was fed up and he gave up all the terrorist attacks, and he wanted to lead this movement with the peacefully, and he wanted to have negotiations with the Israeli people, and he ended, means he came to many agreements regarding as a self-rule of Palestine. So when he ended the long war and when he wanted to have the self-rule of Palestine, even Israel also agreed to withdraw its forces from West Bank. And in addition to giving voting the what is the right means Israel people wanted to give right to vote, and he wanted to they wanted to implement all the facilities to the Arabian people, means Palestinian people. So they all promised, but whatever the promises they did, Israel people failed to give them. Means they did not implement, they did not give right to vote. Means firstly they promised, when Arafat agreed to stop these all the terrorist attacks, they agreed to give the right to vote, and they agreed to give West Bank to Palestinian people. But finally they were failed to implement all the promises. So, but in this time, in this meanwhile time, means meanwhile in 2004, so Arafat, who was the president of this PLO, he was died because of flu. So Arafat was died in 2004 due to the flu fever. But if you see the situation of Palestine, still they are fighting for their rights. So once again I am repeating here, PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. So it was established in 1964, and this party main aim was to regain the land. So with non-violence. In 1964 it was established. In 1964-7, Yasser Arafat became as a leader of this party, and he pressurized, means he forced all the Arabian countries, Arab states, to attack on Israel. But these Arab people were not interested in this issue. So when they were not interested, Arafat led another method. So actually they wanted to go with the non-violence, but Arafat led the terrorist attacks here. So he did plane hijackings, and he killed sports persons. So when these things were done, Israel people, they refused to give means all the facilities whatever they promised it here. So when the situation of the Israel and Palestine were, every time there was a terrorist attacks and retaliations and again counter retaliations, these were continuing here. So because of this warring faction, because of fearful situations, finally Arafat was fed up with these terrorist attacks, and he gave up terrorism, and he wanted to find a peaceful solution by recognizing the formation of Israel. And he held a negotiation with the Israel people and ended the long war. So finally he wanted to have the self-rule of Palestine. So even Israel also agreed to withdraw its forces from the West Bank, and they wanted to give the right to vote to them, and they wanted to give whatever the promises they did, they wanted to implement. But finally, if you see, Israeli people were failed to give all the facilities to the Arab people. It's like giving the right to vote, and returning occupied places to the Palestinian people, and to give all the facilities to them. So these all things were failed by the Israel people. So meanwhile, in 2004, Arafat was died because of due to the flu fever. So if you see the situation of Palestine now, and still they are fighting for the rights. The growth of nationalism in the Middle East. Now our topic is the growth of nationalism in the Middle East. Already we came to know that USA was supporting to the Israel, and not only that, even US became unpopular in this some of the countries. So because of supporting to the undemocratic regime areas. So US not only supporting to the Israel nation, even they supporting to the undemocratic regimes area who had undemocratic thoughts. So what was the main intention of US is, so already in the Middle East they found that oil resources. The US had industries, but they do not have the oil resources. And if they form their favorable government in these Middle East nations, so that favorable governments may help to the US and its allies. So that is the reason US and its allies support to the Israel, as well as they were supporting to the undemocratic thoughts people. But on other part, if you see on another hand, there were some people who had a political thoughts, like a socialist, who had a socialist thought. So they wanted to form the governments the government which can have the benefit of this, which can have the revenue, and that revenue should be shared for the welfare of the common people. Means already US had some other intention, but in these Middle East countries only, some of the people had a socialist thought, and they wanted to have this revenue for the welfare of the common people. So, due to these thoughts only in 1968 in Iraq country. So, due to these socialist thoughts in 1968 in Iraq country, so one of the leader, who's that, Saddam Hussein. So he formed a government based on a twin slogans. So that twin slogans were, what is that, nationalism and socialism. So he came to the power with the twin slogan of Arab nationalism and socialism. Socialism, they mean the nationalization of oil resources and the use of oil revenues by the state to fund welfare measures for the citizens. So, what is the here nationalism? Means whatever the oil resources are there, that oil resources should be under the control of government, and that benefit should be shared for the people, all the people. So that was the main intention of Saddam Hussein. So based on these twin slogans, he formed a government in 1968. Even in 1969 also, government was formed in Libya based on this ideology only. But these people, neither they allowed democratic ideas or nor the protest in their countries. Means firstly they got the support from the people, all the nation people, but slowly they became as a dictators in their nations. But by seeing these situations here, US, so when the socialist, when these Iran, Iraq and some other countries, when they are having the socialist thoughts, so it means US main intention is democratic capitalism, but these people had a USSR ideology. So then US started supporting the people who had religious colors. Means in their country only, whoever having already in one country, if one person had a socialist thought and the government is formed, then US, what they will do, they will encourage, they will provoke the other group of people who will have the democratic capitalist ideology. So that kind of people will be supported by the US. But here in these Middle East nations, instead of that, they started supporting the religious colors people who are having the orthodoxy, extreme religious thoughts, who are believing in religious beliefs. So nation should run based on Islamic rules. So that kind of people were supported by the US. And in the 19, even in 1979, if you observe here, so what happened here? The old king of Iran was removed and a new government was formed by the Shia Islamic clerics. And this new government was formed with a democratic way, and elected leaders were established here. So once again I am repeating here, the growth of nationalism in the Middle East. What happened here in this? The US supported to the Israel, and not only that, they started supporting the undemocratic thoughts. As I said, undemocratic thoughts are nothing but these religious colors, who are having the religious colors or who are having the religious beliefs, that based on that only nation should function. So that kind of people are nothing but undemocratic. So they were supported by the US. So due to these reasons, US was becoming as unpopular. The main intention, the main aim of US is to have the to get the benefit from that oil resources. So if example, if these religious who are having the religious belief, if they form the government with the help of the US, and that people will help to the US. So that was the main intention here. But there was another group of people who were developed, means who were encouraged here, like the revenue of the nation should be shared for the welfare of the common people. So based on this ideology in 1968, so in Iraq countries, Saddam Hussein, he came to the power. So based on these twin slogans, what is that? Nationalism and socialism. Nationalism is nothing but all the resources of the country or state should be under the control of nation, and that benefits should be shared for all the common people. So that was the main aim of Saddam Hussein, and based on that only he formed the government. Even in 1969 in Libya also formed same way based on socialist ideologies, but slowly these people led to the dictatorial side. And in 1979, if you observe in Iran, already US supported government was there, and that government was cancelled, and that old king was removed, who was supported by the US, and there was a new government was formed in a democratical method, in means elected leaders were formed as a government here. And if you see the Afghanistan, even in Afghanistan, also in a previous topic we have discussed, in a 1975, with the support of USSR, socialist government was formed here. So when socialist government was formed, US again started interfering in this country to have what is that to have the favor of US country. Means that they encouraged the Islamic people. Nothing but they're called as the Talibans. They followed the religious rules, and these people up to 1975 to 1985 there was a civil war between these Talibans too and the government. So when the civil war was continued up to 1985, USSR have withdrawn the support to the government already which was formed, and that government was cancelled and the Taliban started ruling there. And these Talibans, what they did when they started ruling based on the religious rules, means Islamic rules, and they denied freedom of the people and equal opportunity to the women and equal opportunities to the religious minorities people, means other religious people who are living in this Afghanistan. So they were not given any kind of facilities here, and equal opportunities also not given to the women. And we know that Yusuf Malala situation, and girls were not given education there, and they were not sent to the school, and freedom also not given to the women. So these all things were done by the Taliban people here. And these Taliban were supported by whom here? The Taliban supported by US. Already socialist government was formed and it was cancelled by the Taliban. So that was the situation of Afghanistan. And these slowly who were supported by the America, and that people, that Talibans only, they led some terrorist attacks on whom? On America again. And they hijacked two aircrafts of US, and they crashed the WTC, World Trade Center of New York. So then we know that Osama bin Laden was supported by US firstly, means the beginning here. But finally what he did, he attacked on US again in 1980, recent situation 2001 or 11. So because of this, again there was a war between Afghanistan and US. Peace moment, collapse of the USSR, and end of the Cold War. So, if you see, as time passed, USSR and USA came under the tremendous public pressure to roll back the arms race and destroy their nuclear arsenals. So here, USA and USSR, already we discussed that they had a lot of weapons, and they had a lot of arms and nuclear arsenals. But these people were by the other countries. They were pressured. Means other countries started pressuring them to roll back. Means to reduce the arms and to ban on the nuclear test. So for this purpose, they started having the talks between all the nations. So finally, means these talks were continued from 1985 to 1991. So finally, they came to one conclusion that to reduce the arms as well as to stop the nuclear arsenals, nuclear tests. And this was largely made possibly by the coming to the power of Mikhail Gorbachev. So this Mikhail Gorbachev, so he brought some reforms which was named as a Glasnost and Perestroika. So Mikhail Gorbachev became as a leader of USSR, and he brought some reforms, and means there was some tremendous changes, and he had a lot of transforms. So in this policies, in that politics, whatever the transforms were there, so that reforms were there, they were called as a Glasnost and Perestroika. So based on this, he revived. What is that? He revived the economic status or economy of this country, and he promoted healthy relations with the Western countries. So previously, if you observe, these USSR people did not have any healthy relationship with the Western countries, and economic status also was not developed. But Mikhail Gorbachev has revived economic status as well as, and he had a healthy relationship with the other countries, and these reforms were called as a Glasnost and Perestroika. But around the same time, the countries of Eastern Europe faced a serious economical problem here, serious economical crisis, which can raise Eastern European countries. So Eastern European countries faced here, but so they expected help from the USSR, but USSR was not in a position to help them. So when they were not in a position to help them, so there was a popular as a result of this, the popular movements were started demanding for the freedom and democracy and economic reforms. So these all were swept across Eastern European countries. Means when they got a crisis, economical crisis, they expected help from the USSR. So when they were not ready to help, then they started demanding for the freedom and democracy, and they needed economic reforms. And not only that, so there was some breaking down of the Berlin Wall, which was divided the Germany into West Germany and East Germany, which we have discussed in a World War lesson. So it was, even Berlin Wall also broke down. So finally, if you observe in the USSR, these people, which people, communist leader, hardliners who had a communist thought, that people they encouraged to remove the Michael Gorbachev. So and they backfired. One means at the time only one more leader, who's that Boris Elstein. He resisted the coup on behalf of the Russian parliament, and he became as a president of USSR. So who wanted to remove here? Communist leaders only wanted to remove this Michael Gorbachev, and in his place Boris Elstein became as a president. And what he did here, so he made a major change, disbanding of the USSR. Means already in a USSR 15 nations was there, but all 15 nations were divided into different nations, different independent countries. Anyhow, after dividing also, that all nations were allies with the USSR, but when it was divided, so it became as a Russia. USSR became as a Russia. So this USSR was continued from 1924 to 1991. In 1991, when it was disbanded by the Boris Elstein, so it became as a Russia, and these all independent countries were still with the Russia. So with this collapse, USSR, a new era began in the world politics. So once again I am repeating here. So in this peace moment, so collapse of the USSR and end of the Cold War. So what happened here? USA and USSR, when they had a lot of arms, when they prepared nuclear weapons, and they continuously when they were testing, so they were pressurized by the other countries, other nations to roll back. So what they wanted to roll back here? They wanted other nations demanded these two countries to reduce the arms and to ban test of nuclear weapons. So these talks were continued from 1985 to 1991. So finally, when the Michael Gorbachev became as a leader of this USSR country, he brought some changes. He transformed politics into some reforms. So that reforms were called as a glasnost and perestroika. So based on this, Michael Gorbachev, he revived the economy of this country, and he had a healthy relationship with the Western countries. So until that time, there was no good relationship with the Western countries. They had a relationship with the Eastern countries, not the Western. But this time, this fell only first he created. And so at the same time, the other countries of Eastern Europe, so Eastern Europe countries, they got the economical crisis problem. So when they got the economical crisis, even USSR was not in a position to help them. So as a result of this, the popular movements were held in these Eastern European countries, like demanding for the freedom and demanding for the democracy, and demanding then they wanted to have some economical reforms. So finally, what is that breaking down of Berlin Wall also, which was divided. This wall was divided Germany into two states, like Western Germany and Eastern Germany, and that also broke. And by seeing these all changes in 1991, some of the communist hardliners of the USSR, they wanted to remove the Gorbachev. So in the same time, the Boris Elstein became as a president of this country, and he brought major change here. So that change was disbanding of the USSR. Means USSR divided into different nations, 15 countries, and that all countries became as independent countries. Still, they are ally of Russia. So this is about this moment.